So today we are going to start a new chapter, one of my most favorite chapters of the year, although I think I say that for every chapter, talking about these things called integers and how we can represent them and how we can use them in our everyday lives. And then also graphing. Integers a lot of times are used with coordinates and laying things out with GPS and all kinds of things that we use in everyday life. So if you need to look this up, it is chapter 5 in your volume 1 textbook, lesson 1 of the chapter. And we're going to talk about just integers in general, a little bit of graphing on the number line. So I keep saying this word integer. What is an integer? Well, it is a positive or a negative number. And I'm sure you've seen some of the negative numbers if you've been paying attention to the weather. It's, cold wind chills out. Specifically, an integer does not have any fractions or decimals. Are there negative fractions and decimals? Absolutely. But they have a different name, and we're not going to worry about them in this chapter. We're just going to worry about the counting numbers that have a positive or a negative sign. Okay? All right, so let's talk about this. What are some examples and what are some non-examples of integers? I'll give you a second to think. You can even pause the video if you want to jot a few down. What are some examples? And what are some numbers that are not examples of integers? All right, let's see. Some examples, and you could have, there's an unlimited amount of things that we could put on here. Things like 4, 0, 6, -8, -394, and lots more. Some things that are not examples, something like 0.2, -4/3, 1 1/2, -927.6. These are non-examples because they are fractions and decimals. Some are positive, some are negative, but because they're fractions and decimals, we will not consider them to be integers. These are positives and negatives, but no fractions and decimals. Notice that 0 is an integer. It's the only one that will not have a sign. It's what we call neutral. If I see that on a paper, you will probably hear me scream from the next town over because that doesn't exist. There is no such thing as -0. 0 is in the middle. We'll talk about that in a minute when we look at a number line. It does not have a sign, and it is neither positive nor negative. It is neutral. It's just kind of its own thing. Fun fact, it's the only number that does not have a sign. It's the only number that is neither positive nor negative. Okay? All right, let's talk about these positives and negative numbers. A positive number is something that is above 0 or greater than 0 or more than 0. All of the numbers that you learned in elementary school are positive numbers. So if I take something like 3 or 8 or 4,212, those are all positive numbers. Often, we do not put the plus sign in front of them. We assume that if a number doesn't have a sign, we just assume that it's going to be positive. However, as you're learning, if you want to put a little plus sign in front of it, totally fine. Well, how do you make sure that that's not confused with an addition sign? Well, it can be confusing. A lot of times you'll know from the type of problem, or sometimes it will do double duty. This will be both a positive sign and an addition sign, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Let's go and talk about negatives. A negative number is something that is below or less than 0. It will always have a sign. So something like -5, -237. Sometimes you'll see it with parentheses just to highlight that that sign goes with the number. It's intended to be a negative sign, or so that it doesn't get blended in with something else. Right? Negatives will always have a sign. Positives, it's up to you. 0 doesn't get one ever. Okay? All right. Real life situations where you might use this, and we will talk a whole lot about this on our Zoom tomorrow, but things like temperature. We got a snowstorm going. If you're paying attention to the weather, they might be talking about wind chills in the negative degrees. Money, your bank account, putting money in, taking money out. owing people money, gaining money from a paycheck, things like that. Golf, if you are under par, that's a good thing, and you'll see it with a little minus sign in front of it. Things like normal. We were above average. We were above the normal. We were below average. We were below the normal. Elevation, talking about sea level and mountains or valleys. And time, my time for my 5K, I shaved 2 minutes off of it. That was a negative 2 minute split. Okay. These are situations where you will see negatives and positives all the time. And we will talk in more detail about them tomorrow. All right. One more thing. Let's talk about how you represent these on the number line. So you can either do a horizontal number line or you can do a vertical number line. They mean the same thing. I think perhaps when you're learning, you might be more comfortable with a vertical number line because it looks a little bit more like a thermometer. And so the change of going up and down is a little bit more clear, but certainly you can do side to side with the horizontal. Okay, let's talk about some features. Everything is evenly spaced, just like a regular number line. 0 is smack dab in the middle. If I was to take this and fold it right on the 0, the 1s would match up and the 2s would match up and the 3s, etc., etc. Because it has these arrows on the end, we know that it will go on forever in both directions. What else can I tell you about the number lines? Notice that when I start at 0, you're used to seeing the positives, right? Know that it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When we go in the negative direction, it goes the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you still kind of radiate out from 0. The counting is exactly the same. Be very careful down here when you first start off that you're numbering these in the proper order. Start at 0 and work your way away in order. Same thing for a vertical number line. 0 smack dab in the center. We go 0, 1, 2, 3 and continue on. When we drop down, we go the same order. 0, -1, -2, -3, etc. Okay? All right, let's do some graphing practice real quick. Take a piece of paper, a sticky note, whatever you've got handy. Jot yourself a number line. Doesn't matter if you go side to side or up and down. I'm actually going to do one of each. So you might want to try that with me. All right. Our numbers will not be any higher than 4 or lower than -4. So as long as you can fit that on your number line, you'll be fine. Okay, let's first graph the set of numbers -3, -1, and 2. So once I have my number line set up, and if you haven't yet, go ahead and pause and then come back when you're ready. Once you have your number line set up, I'm just going to make a dot at each one of these numbers. So I'm going to put a dot at -3. I'm going to put a dot at -1. And I'm going to put a dot at +2. Notice I did not choose to put the plus sign to my positives. Just kind of assumed. That's how you graph numbers. Easy cheesy. All right, let's do another set. Here we're going to do 2, 4, and -3. These weren't listed in order, but that's okay. I'm going to do this one on the vertical. If you haven't made your number line yet, pause and then come back when you're ready. So I'm going to put a dot at +2, a dot at +4, and a dot at -3. That shows the 3 numbers in my set. And again, they didn't have to be in order. I was just putting the dots and then I can kind of compare and put them in order from there.